It's Wednesday the 13th of April. Welcome along everybody to what has become SRO Esports Day. It's the first round of the 2022 Mobileye GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship, and this is the first of 5 60-minute sprint races that include our championship. We will also, of course, have the Intercontinental Endurance Championship across the year on Saturdays, but this is Sprint Day, and alongside myself, Ben Kotsanjuris, is David Addison, fresh of course from the first round of the Endurance Championship in the real world and the Pro Series in Imola a couple of weekends ago, and the first round also of the European Sprint Series last week. David, esports is back for good.
It most definitely is, Ben. Yes, welcome everybody to what promises to be another really lively race. Although we're talking about the Asia Sprint Series, we're going to start with a European circuit. We are at Barcelona, and it is a mighty entry, is it not? A pro category, a silver category, both of which are very strong, both numerically and, Ben, in terms of drivers that we've become familiar with over previous seasons of esports racing.
48 drivers have signed up, and unlike the previous years, a little entry fee is required to enter into the championship. We do not have our champion from last year, Darren Warren, with us, and therefore an opportunity for a new champion. Ferris Stanley, a name that you will be recognising from previous years. Team boss of Laundry House, Andrew Lawrenson, returns. Ryan Houlihan, also for Laundry House. But we've got big names such as Mercedes-AMG. The Legion of Racers will be very, very strong. And R8G is also represented here with a female racer who was incredibly strong last year and steps up into a Porsche this year, Philippa Bokida, who is in the 326. R8G Esports is, of course, Romain Grosjean's squad. Alpha Venturi Racing, another very well-known name. We have 12 examples of the BMW M4 GT3, which is a brand new car to ACC, and seriously at the moment seems to be the choice of car, but we do have 10 different brands across our 48 car field.
Well, this circuit is one that has 16 corners in total. There are different configurations of it for whether it's GT use or Formula 1 use. You've got that long, fast pit straight, and although there are a number of corners then through the infield, it is still a power circuit. And interesting then that Philippa Bokida with the Porsche is going to be lining up provisionally on pole position, with the outside of the front row set to be the Ferrari of Moussa Massoum. So you've got a car there that's perhaps, in the case of the Ferrari, a bit more aero-friendly, but both of them, if you like, being able to outpace things like Aston Martin or Bentley, which are real good grunt-and-go front-engine cars, Ben.
There is a need for a decent handling machine around here with lots of medium-speed corners as well, and of course, we've got to get through the full 60 minutes. You've got to make sure the tyres will last those full 60 minutes, and in some notes, we also need to make sure that the fuel will get through the 60 minutes as well. I don't think it's too much of a problem on this circuit, but we do know in some of the high-speed circuits that some marks do require a little bit of lifting and coasting, if you like. I don't think we'll see that today, but we do, of course, have that mandatory pit stop.
Indeed so, and we'll come to the pit stop in due course. First of all, let's just have a quick look at this Barcelona circuit with the track guide. Ryan Gill will talk you around the circuit.
Welcome to your Mobileye track overview here at the Circuit de Barcelona-Catalunya. We're going to jump on board with Ryan Houlihan in the BMW M4 GT3. As we come out the final corner, we begin the long run down the main start-finish straight as we move to the left side of the circuit to prepare for turn 1. We want to use the curb and the AstroTurf on the left to widen the entry of corner as much as possible before turning in early and cutting the inside of turn 1, riding the curb as we head through turn 2. Once entering turn 3, want to hug the inside line initially, modulate the throttle before powering out of the corner and going as wide as the track limits allow on the left side of the circuit. Just keep 2 tyres on the wide line before the curb, and then take a tight line as you go through the Repsol corner, cutting in early to prepare yourself for turn 5. and take a sharp line through this corner as you use to look as much of the exit curb as you can. Next, you'll go flat through the kink of turn 6 and brake once you reach the curb on the right side of the circuit. Take a wide line through 7 and then straight line as much of turn 8 as you can before braking for turn 9 once the curb ends. Run up to the inside of the curb as you can and launch yourself out of the corner, going as wide on the exit as possible whilst evading track limits. Move to the right hand side of the circuit and brake towards the end of the gravel trap near the entry of the Lacaisha hairpin. Tuck the car inside and use as much of the exit as you can. Go straight through turn 11 and then try to use the inside line of turn 12 and go nice and wide on the exit before a sharp turn for turn 13. Then you'll brake just as you get to the chicane and use as much of the curbs as the car allows you to before putting down the power and blasting through turn 16 and back onto the main start finish straight to do it all over again.
Ryan Houlihan in the Mobileye Laundry House BMW M4 GT3 that we will see running around this Barcelona circuit. Mid-pack for Ryan, well actually not really mid-pack, 14th position is certainly the sharper end of the grid, but he'll be looking to try and elevate himself a little bit further. We've got a huge amount of BMW M4 GT3s, David, 12 in total, 10 brands across the 48 cars. But having a brand new machine and knowing how much support that brand new machine has had from the works guys at BMW means it's obviously a car that people want to participate in.
Absolutely, and as you say, that Laundry House team backed by Mobileye. It is the Mobileye GT World Challenge Esports Asia Sprint Series. Mobileye, big supporters of SRO and Esports this year, the innovative company, the innovative partner, so we look forward to continued support. And from the point of view of Mobileye ex Laundry House, a good result this afternoon in this opening round of the Asian Sprint Series. Let's have a quick scroll up the grid. Philippa Bokida and Musa Massoum on the front row. Andika Malana, champion a couple of years back, lines up alongside there, number 73 of Ferris Stanley. And then on the third row of the grid, you've got number 62, which is Fadli Rahmat with the best of the Bentleys. And then to line up sixth on the grid, number 144 of Dylan Tan. They're the Mercedes, which again I think could well be a car to watch over the course of this race, trying to make a little bit of progress. Next up, 187 is Moreno Pratama with the Aston Martin, and alongside him, number 449, which is going to be the Jake Baldwin driven Ferrari, the Happy Laps car. Then yet another of the many BMWs of which Ben has been talking. Number 11 is Fikri Segayat for the Gaetari Sim Racing Equipe, and 29 on the outside of him is Dafa Nabil with another BMW out of the IMX Phantom stable. Guess what comes next? It is yet another BMW as we scroll further back down the grid. And you'll see in a moment or two just how busy the circuit is here. Looking further back towards the rear of the grid, you have the likes of Sky Live, for example, want to try to make some progress through. Luis Moreno as well. But Ben, what's really encouraging about this for our opening round of this Mobileye GT World Challenge Asia Esports Championship, and you've touched on it already, is just how many cars there are. The grid just stretching further and further and further back all the way to turn 16.
4.7 kilometres is the length of the circuit. I think we'll have cars scattered all across it by the time we end up with the first couple of laps. Also, the field spread is quite tight. We have to go down to 40th position for a 1 second gap. Is that correct? I think it is correct when I'm looking at my timing screens. Unbelievable. So it's going to be very tight at the head of the field. It's going to be one long train.
It is, absolutely so. Of course, we know from races past that the first couple of corners, a bit of a pinch point. You've got that right and left and then a long right. Get yourself on the wrong line there. You're going to be in real jeopardy all the way around that first sequence of corners, aren't you?
Yeah, on the outside of that long right-hander, it's then a braking zone and another right-hander. Very, very hard to hold on to the inside line there as we now look at the more around the tail end of our grid, although actually the cars seem to stretch further into the distance. And it's going to be, as you say, getting yourself in the right position. I imagine, therefore, that qualifying has had to be very, very important. And the timing of your pit stop will be very important, because it will allow you, if you've got the backing of the likes of Mercedes-AMG, which is a works team here for Legion of Racers, they will have guys watching the race, maybe with us, maybe inside the game, and be able to work out if you pit now, you're going to find yourself some clear air. I think clear air is going to be very, very crucial.
I would go along with that, and we are very close, of course, to getting things underway here then. We'll have the formation lap first of all. You've touched on pit stops. Now, again, there is this 15 to 45 minute window. You take on a litre of fuel, but it might not sound all that important to pit stop, but as we have seen in the past, it certainly is crucial, and you can lose a race if you get that pit stop wrong. Also, of course, Ben, there are penalties from real-world stewards to factor in, as well as from the game itself.
Yeah, so one of the big things that they have to be working out on pit stops is to make sure you press the pit limiter at the right time, so you don't speed in the pit, because it's not something that will be watched by our real-world stewards. That is an automatic penalty straight away if you go too fast into pit lane, much like if you gain advantage by skipping across a curb. The only place that's really going to happen here is that chicane at the end of the lap. If you do end up missing that chicane, going too fast over it, then you could find yourself with an automatic penalty. And then, of course, the start of the race, there's lots of automatic penalties as to where your car is positioned. Then we've got the bank of stewards that are watching all of those different issues on track and deciding whether there's penalties that should be applied to racing incidents across 48 cars, across 60 minutes. They're going to have a huge amount of work to do. There's no doubt about that.
Indeed, yes. We often do have to talk about the provisional result, don't we, as they come across the line, because then the stewards can go back and have a look and play things from different angles. They have the ability, the luxury maybe, that real-world race officials don't have because of the multitudinous camera angles. Right, we're in business then, because it's a rolling start, of course. That means that the cars now leave the line. Everybody rejoins the server ready for the race. We'll be keeping an eye, of course, on what's going on overall, but also the two classes within this Mobileye GT World Challenge Esports Asia Sprint Series. As I've mentioned, Mobileye is all about innovation, and I suspect that you're going to find one or two innovative moves from people in order to get through the traffic, and not only get through traffic in order to gain position, but of course once that pit window opens, Ben, back markers will be a big factor around here as well, because you could rejoin in traffic and suddenly have your pace compromised.
Yeah, absolutely. Choosing when you pit is going to be absolutely crucial. And as I said earlier, those teams that have got guys who are working behind the scenes, and many of them will, they will be able to then plan that pit stop. And it's not just a case of the driver in the car deciding when he pits. It actually is a team decision, looking at the space on the track, where you can go, how you will benefit. Are you being held up in traffic as well? And do you need to get yourself out of a battle? Not necessarily back markers battle, but actually a racing battle that perhaps is compromising your speed. So that is, with a 48 car grid, that's going to be crucial. How many of those cars we will have after a couple of laps, you know, because you have the possibility of terminal damage here as well. So we might see people pulling out and dropping out, but lots of opportunities here, and certainly we're going to have a lot of action all the way through the field. We are watching Jake Baldwin, not to be confused with James Baldwin, and in the Happy Laps car, the Ferrari. But yeah, when you see him on the timing screens as Jay Baldwin, you think, how has he ended up in the Asia Series? He is not.
Baldwin, a good racing name. Right, we've got the cars then making their way towards the end of this formation lap. So towards the end of it, they turn through turn 10, La Caixa, and then climb the hill. You go left and left again, and then it goes right through turn 12 up towards the top of the hill, as you see Filippo Bocchida then getting set to bring the cars down towards now the turn 13 tight right, and you can see that the markers there mean that you're going to have to go down the short straight into the chicane, which gives you turns 14 and 15, and this again is a part of the circuit where incident can come. So it is Filippo Bocchida alongside Musa Mahum on the front of the grid then, number 49 on the outside of the front row there, the rookie monsters Ferrari of Musa Mahum. So Is he going to be able to get the jump? Let's find out, because we are set to go racing then. The cars make their way now up towards the timing line, and Ben, we are ready to go.
Philippe Oqueda on the inside line for turns 1 and 3. The Ferrari on the inside line for the pinch point at turn 2. We've already got a drive-through penalty a little bit further back for cars out of position. The green flag flies, and for the moment, Oqueda looking strong, but behind in third position, Maulana in the Mercedes trying to make it 3 wide into turn 1. A little bit of contact. And very, very hard defensive work from Oqueda, who holds on into turn 1, shuts the door into turn 2, and does lead. So Maulana was the one who had the jump, the grunt of the Mercedes, getting him right onto the tail of the BMW, but now has fallen back just a little bit and has pressure from behind too.
Those drive-throughs are going to be looked at just to make sure that they're legit and that they are accurate, as Philippe Oqueda then leads the pack as they turn their way now up through turn 4 for the first time. Set the car up now to drop downhill through 5, but the Porsche leads Ferrari, leads Mercedes, so 3 very different brands in the top 3, and Philippe Oqueda now trying to build the advantage over Moussa Marsoum as the cars accelerate then along this far section up towards turn 7. Turn through that left. Again, short straight up towards turn 9. The Kampsa right-hander at the top of the circuit effectively here. We've got 1 or 2 stragglers. Daniel Hunter has dropped a long way back. The Honda, I'm afraid to say, somewhat distant. I don't think he did that all on his own, as you now look at number 11. The BMW of Fikri Segar from the Gayatri Sim Racing squad in 7th place and on the attack, Ben.
I'm afraid we've also lost Mitch Hobbs from the Happy Laps team in the BMW. Happy Laps seems to have entered lots of different cars, maybe to spread their load and see how each one fares. Couple of cars in the middle of the pack facing the wrong direction. That was in the 20s and 30s, and we've lost a lot of cars there. A lot of damage being done to various GT3 machines. That is Wong in the number 9 BMW. Marco getting back going again, but whilst the cars can still run, they're never quite as fast after pummeling into the side of another.
Yeah, 74 Xavier Lai was another one for Blue Steel Racing with the Mercedes, but as you described at the time, there were lots of others that were all piling in, so I think straight away the stewards are going to be busy looking at that. And more drama here heading down towards turn 1 because contact is made there. Look, one of the Ferraris from the Laundry House team slithers off the road. That could well be Andrew Lawrenson himself, and he wasn't alone in that because I think it was a Lamborghini that he got entangled with. So there the car goes through. It was Sky Lai, wasn't it, who has recovered number 127. So the Revolt Pool Racing car getting involved with Andrew Lawrenson tumbles down the order. The first couple of corners looked good, but it's been a bit scrappy after that.
Yeah, that was on the main straight as well. Contact, I think, between the Ferrari and the Lamborghini, which spat the Lamborghini onto the barrier, unsettled the Ferrari, and then he didn't manage to catch it by the time he got to turn 1, which was a good 500-600 metres of fighting it. But that's a shame that further back we are seeing damage and we're seeing contact, but at the head of the field it looks pretty clean so far. Mohamed Alif trying to go around the outside. That's interesting place to place your BMW. Trying to get past Woods in the Woods in the Porsche is ahead, so it's Madison trying to go up the inside, and that should be place gained in the harder braking zone into turn 9, which has been modified over the last couple of years and a little bit different to now. Still side by side between Alif and now Reyes.
And Alif just hanging on to the place in the BMW, but then finds himself on the outside line, but he's got the inside for the next corner. The first part of the chicane, breaks late, goes back through. Good racecraft that, stood his ground, waiting for the road to come to him. The trouble is that whilst he's been squabbling, so Alif has got a whole traffic jam of cars building up behind him. He's a little bit like the cork in the bottle right now. Quick word also about this Mobileye back championship in terms of points. You get points in your class for the top 15. There's also 3 for being on pole position in your class and 2 for the fastest lap in class. In other words, it is worth keeping going. Points for the top 15 finishers in each category.
That was a big slide from the Mercedes of Reyes behind Alif going through turn 1, just basically throw it in, and it didn't quite stick as we now switch our attention to Ryan Chan in the 26 BMW. Talking about classes, he is therefore 5th in class, even though that's a lie. I'm just looking at this. The timing screen is so large that we're actually only seeing from 15th down to 37th there, so he's 5th on that timing screen. There are others ahead of him.
That's a snapshot of the race, as you say, because with so many starters, you can't find a television big enough. 901 then goes through, and this is Ryan Chan privateer entry with the BMW M4 GT3. He's down in 26th place at the moment. The next target just up the road ahead, and bear in mind that he's a silver, is the pro in the Honda, Sean Madison, number 60. So some of the good silvers easily able to mix it with the pros. 62 through in the Bentley. That is the pro class entry of Fadli Rashmat, the Tarmac Works car.
He leads 6.6 of a second ahead of Madsen, with Maulana just 0.2 of a second back in third position. And then Ferris Stanley fourth, and Rahman with the fastest lap of the race. Here are those top five, and Tan in sixth position, the second of our effectively works Mercedes. Take a look at a replay. So this is what we saw a little bit earlier on, and just a lot of cars and a lot of traffic going in. God, actually, that first spinner seemed to do it on his own, and then this is another pinch point, the left-hander, and three wide just doesn't work.
And then people scatter in avoidance, and by avoiding you get into the way of somebody else, and that triggers another accident. And so utter mayhem broke out, didn't it, for those, as you say, towards the rear of the pack. Philippa Bokida is driving very nicely here, isn't she, because she's building this gap. It's not yet up to a second, but it's not far off, and so that little margin is extending, and she's not really under any pressure right now either.
No, doing really nice job. R8G really have become a very professional outfit over the last kind of 12 months, really. Romain Grosjean, when he first announced that he was going to be a team manager, team owner, he really wasn't very good at sim racing, and it seemed a bit of a strange decision, but he's got it absolutely in love with it, and with that has a huge amount of influence and effect on the team, and has been working very hard. Interestingly, that Philippa Bokida is on her own in that team here, so she doesn't have a huge amount of support in the actual race. But this is a good little battle. Ryan Houlihan trying to find a way past Lee, who's a privateer, but it's got a really good proper Asian livery on that car.
And gets forced out wide, so Ryan Houlihan, who you can see at work, fighting his way through, runs out of road, couldn't get back in the pack, could he, coming down towards the chicane. So he has won the Kyle Army 9 hours, the Paul Ricard 8 hours in the past, in different platforms, and was 8th overall in GT World Challenge Asia on Assetto Corsa, going back to the 2021 season. Ryan Houlihan then taking charge, if you like, of this Mobileye-backed laundry house entered BMW. 13th place he is now. He's had a real fight on his hands, but he's cleared that traffic wave, and there's more up the road.
And you can see chatting away to whoever is working alongside his team, part of the Laundry House squad. So there'll be drivers that he'll be able to chat to, who are, I think, a little bit further down the field than where he is, but he's also got a team of guys who are not racing, but literally here to watch over that car, to see what's happening, where the spots are to make that mandatory pit stop. Can't do it yet, has to wait for the 15 minutes, first 15 minutes of the race.
Penalties are now coming. So Mohammed Alif, who we were watching racing earlier on, he has been given a 1.5 second time penalty for causing a collision, and the victim of it was Sky Lai. So that's, I'm afraid. So sorry, 5 second penalty, I should say, for the BMW, 5 second penalty, and therefore after Skylight had one tangle with Andrew Lawrenson, there was another one with Alif, and Alif pays the penalty, as there is the Audi getting collected of Ryan Duong. So the baked potato racing car very nearly had its chips there, but it's back in the race.
A very interesting livery, and also name. Obviously a lot of these teams, some of these teams more privateer than others. Some of them are actually called privateers. I do like the name of Ferris Stanley's team or entry, which is #soon. So he's obviously in talks with a team, but hasn't got the ability to use it quite yet. So we don't know yet who Ferris Stanley is going to be part of. But it was, of course, Coanda Simsport who took victory last year in this particular championship with Darren Warren, and part of the Coanda Porsche Association. It's kind of slightly disappeared this year in the world of sim racing. They were spreading their load across all the various different platforms, and now with the partnership with Porsche, almost seem to have become a bit more introvert than we saw last year. Here's a good position for Terry Rayton in the Laundry House car.
Indeed so, in 11th place in the Audi. Another incident between Kobe Chan, number 18, and Daniel Hunter's Honda. I think that was also from the first lap. That's going to be looked at after the race, so it might well be that it takes a while to confirm results from this. The stewards want to look at all the evidence, and there's a lot going on that they need to be looking at right now as well. So Terry Rayton then in the Laundry House Audi in 11th spot, not quite close enough to make a move. Up front though, Filippo Bocchida edging clear of the opposition.
48 cars, as we said, on this entry list, just to get you more familiar with how these cars entered this race. For the pro drivers, they actually can be nominated by the manufacturers, and there are various relationships between the manufacturers and the organisers of SRO Esports for this 2022 season, some of which have really come on strong. The likes of BMW, Lamborghini have just announced that they have a works team now in esports, run by one of their Lamborghini Trofeo drivers, and they therefore have the choice to put two pro drivers into their pro cars. If those two manufacturers are not represented, then there is also the ability to qualify for the remaining drivers of the pro class, and that's what we also see in the silver category as well. So this entry list that we have will vary across the 5-round championship that they have. Imola next up on the 11th of May, then the Bathurst race. Zolder and Suzuka are the 5 rounds that make up this sprint championship. Across this year, the last round will be in August, so it is not particularly hectic schedule, but of course within that is also the IGTC Endurance Championship, which is a larger category and really the kind of the headline events of the year.
And that kicks off this coming weekend, doesn't it, with Bathurst on Saturday. Now, we were looking at Damon Woods a moment ago in number 56 with the privateer entered, if you like, Porsche. Now, Andika Maulana, who was really good in the Asian Championship going back 2 seasons when the whole esports impetus really took off in lockdown. Andika Maulana hard at work then. He is on the tail of Moussa Mahsoum's Ferrari, but not quite close enough to be able to make a move as the Mercedes AMG Esports Team LOR entry comes through the chicane. He has now caught up onto the Ferrari, but in doing so takes Ferris Stanley with him, and in doing so these three get together for a battle. That plays right into the hands of Filippo Bocchida, who comes across the line now, extending the advantage. It's up to 1.8 seconds now.
Yes, Bocchida is obviously a different class to Maulana. Maulana being the leader of his particular class down the inside. Change of position, but no change in points, of course, because Maulana still leads his particular class. What he has done now is put a car between himself and Ferris Stanley, and that is crucial because Ferris now is still got to try and get past the Ferrari, whereas Maulana can start lapping in the pace that he is comfortable with.
There's a drive-through penalty going to number 23, Davlish Singh, the Gen Z Racing Lamborghini, for causing a collision, which involved Yuki Shirakawa's Ferrari. So yeah, Andika Maulana, not only has he gained that place, and as you rightly say, maintains his category lead, but he's getting away straight away from that Ferrari. So now this is going to be really interesting to see how long it takes him to hunt down the race-leading Porsche of Filippo Bocchida. We could be building up now for a really good lead battle, couldn't we?
Absolutely, and considering also Maulana is a pro-class driver, not only that, he is a works Mercedes Legion of Racers driver, to Bocchida, who is actually entered in the silver class, which is quite surprising considering her successes from last year. She is a silver class driver, not a pro class driver, so that might change across the season. Porsche might look at it and think, well, we've got Ferris Stanley, we've got Damon Woods in our 2 pro cars, maybe we can replace Damon or Ferris with Filippo for the remaining races.
Another incident between Kejin Chow, number 951, and Davlish Singh, 23, is a racing incident, so nothing needs to be done about that. As you look at Daniel Hunter, he drives car number 3, but he's way back. Remember, he was delayed on the first lap of the race, but what he has now done in the Happy Laps entry is catch up to the queue of cars, so he can from here on in start to think about gaining places. We now start to think then about the pit stop window, because we're almost at the end of the first 15 minutes, so it's going to be interesting to see who bails when and how they try and use this to get them out of the traffic.
Yeah, and how much of a field spread have we got as well? How much of the track is occupied by cars? That's another question to consider, because yes, if you're getting yourself out of traffic that you're running with, but if that traffic's running at a faster pace, you don't want to then put yourself into or behind a car which is actually running slower than where you were before. So a difficult one for the privateer entries that might not have the capacity or friends spotting for them, but certainly for the bigger teams there should be people working on that right now. Pit window is now open and will be open for the next half an hour.
Indeed so, and that means that you've got to make the stop, you've got to take on that litre of fuel, and it's going to shuffle the order, but whether anybody benefits or loses out significantly, we will see. So we've got one or two people with these penalties that are going to have to be served, but up front, Filippo Bocchida as the race leader, trying to extend the advantage over the charging Andika Maulana now. Good battles further down the order. 30th right now is number 39. That's the Ferrari of Yuki Shirakawa. Shirakawa on the attack as he tries to get up the inside there. Oh, so nearly gained ground against the McLaren. But Tana Lapanan just for Vatana Motorsport able to keep him at bay. Another of the McLarens on a mission. Number 26 then. And that, for the moment, stuck behind the Bentley, isn't it?
Yeah, Shaquille here down in 37th position as we switch our attention back to Ferris Stanley, still in 4th, still behind the Ferrari, and maybe being caught by Tan in that second Mercedes just behind. Interestingly, talking of field spread, I had a quick look. 43 seconds separate first and 42nd position. Now, how long is it going to take to go into the pits, do 1 litre of fuel and come back out? I would say that's got to be at least 30 odd seconds. So you're still going to find yourself in quite a bit of traffic if you do that pit stop. If you're at the head of the field right now, if you're in the mid pack, maybe you can do that pit stop. We are seeing a couple of cars further back with that green dot beside their name, meaning they are now taking their compulsory pit stop. One of which I think was Andrew Lawrenson.
And also number 24, Avila Baja for the JMX Phantom squad with his Mercedes AMG. He has pitted. Right, Filippo Bocchida leads the way, and actually the gap isn't coming down much, is it? As you see there, Chris Tsang rejoining in the Bentley. So it's still over a second between the top two, very nearly up to 2 seconds. There, the Bentley rejoins. Careful not to go over that white line, because in the real world you're told to treat that as a barrier, and if you drive over it then you get a penalty. So a battle further down involving Ryan Houlihan, the Mobileye back BMW, then in traffic. He's got himself back onto the tail of Moreno Pratama here. This is the Motul Racing Aston Martin. Nose to tail, these two, as they turn out of turn 13, drop down to the chicane. But again, Ryan Houlihan, for the moment, has got himself just a little bit stuck, and so he bails. He comes into the pit lane, serves that mandatory stop. This could be a very good, shrewd move.
Notice that the first of our stoppers so far is Avil Bahar, but he does have a 30-second stop-go penalty to his name. Dylan Tan has got the inside line for turn 2. Oh, there's a back marker in the way as well for Ferris Stanley to deal with, and that was his saving grace, I think. Ferris Stanley just about getting away with that, and now Tan has got Rahma trying to get past him, and suddenly, from being attacked, Ferris can actually relax a little bit, because Tan's going to lose out here to Rahma.
He is indeed. Side still. Inside. Yeah, fantastic. This, the two front engine cars on the inside line. It's going to be the Mercedes AMG for the next corner, and Rahma has to slot back in behind. So aboard 144, Dylan Tan reasserts himself, but he's not really gained out of all of that. All he's done finally is to preserve what he had in the first place. And you're right, Ferris Stanley in the dark blue and purple Porsche, the one that looks a bit like a bruise, has managed to just extend the margin a bit further.
He was so lucky that the Laundry House Ferrari was where he was, because I think basically what happened, Tan just had to get out the throttle. He was boxed in so badly, and by doing so, that then allowed the Bentley to come around the outside and did a great job of just placing that Mercedes in the right place, so that ultimately the Bentley had to travel a longer distance to get past him, and therefore it is status as it was at the start of the lap, with Stanley in 4th, Tan 5th and Rahma 6th. But that has given quite a comfort margin to the Ferrari in 3rd position of Mashoum. I don't expect many of these guys to be pitting at the moment, unless they really feel like they're being held up, but the pace is good at the front.
A warning being given to Yat Lam Law in the Waco's Flip Table Racing BMW for contact earlier on. So this battle pack comes across the line. You're looking at 5th and 6th back. And who else is in this that might be making progress before the end? Jake Baldwin sitting in 9th place, number 449 Ferrari. But Fadli Rashmat there on the tail once more of Dylan Tan as they ride the curb. Coming out of turn 2, the Bentley not quite yet needing to think about the pressure from behind, because Fikri Seguiaya is close but not close enough really to offer a challenge. So that means, for the moment at least, that Rashmat can concentrate on that car ahead and try to whittle down that gap again.
Just waiting for Ryan Houlihan to come across the line to see where he has ended up after his pit stop, and he's down in the 30s. Is he clear of traffic though? That's the question. No, 31st position is where he's at, and has clear track around him, look. So that's good. He can get his head down and get some decent laps in. Shaquille is the next car up the road that we saw a little bit earlier on, in now 30th position in that McLaren. And yeah, at the moment there's about 10-12 seconds between the two, so that's pretty good. And Shaquille's in the pits anyway.
Indeed. So the Mobileye BMW being innovative in when it takes its mandatory stop. Now, clear road, therefore these need to be qualifying laps. However, bear in mind that Ryan Houlihan was only 14th after qualifying. So it just starts to make one question the absolute outright pace of that car. But again, with a clear road around him, he might be able to gain some places when the pit stop window closes. Fadli Rashmat, in the meantime, comes down through the chicane. There he is in the Bentley. Out wide goes Dylan Tan. And so the 5th and 6th, Rashmat on the prowl once more, look, as they hit the pit straight. And now speed builds and builds and builds and builds. Foot absolutely to the boards here as they go over the timing line. 12 laps are in the book, and the margin between these two just under half a second.
Looking ahead, though, doesn't look as though there should be too much traffic to deal with. Further back, Terry Rayton under pressure here from Pratt Mar, trying to go around the outside, gives him a bit of a squeeze, little bit of contact, but what he's trying to do is claim the inside line for that corner. The contact hasn't worked, it's slowed both of them down, and here comes Lee in the BMW looking to try and go around the outside, but that's never going to work at turn 3. It's just too difficult to travel around the outside. We now ride on board with King Long Lee, and he stays in 12th. Aston Martin runs wide, opens the door for BMW, and that's an easy one.
That was Pratama having got himself ahead of Rayton. He then ran out wide, so one up and one back. So Moreno Pratama falls back into the queue, and he now comes under pressure as well from who is next in that line. It's going to be Unistrap. So big shuffle going on. So Kim Longley makes a bit of progress briefly, but certainly as far as Pratama was concerned, I'm afraid he threw that one away just by going too deep into the corner. Now, pit window remains open, 22 more minutes of that, and after the window closes, 15 minutes of racing. Clock ticks on down, 37 more minutes remain as there, look, number 462 BMW of Kin Longley has to go defensive to keep Moreno Pratama's recovering Aston Martin at bay.
Love that livery as well. That's very much what you like to see over in the Asia Series. Lots of colour, whack-off sponsorship, and really almost looks like a Nissan the way that it's liveried. It's obviously not. It's obviously a BMW, but it's a great livery, one of the best out there on the field. And of course, all that battle started because Pratma was trying to get past Terry Rayton. Rayton's chilled out in his Leighton house there, just ahead now. No pressure. Lee's managed to clear Pratmar as well, and one lap ago they were all together, and now look at the space between the three of them.
And we talked earlier about a penalty that was being given to Mohamed Alif for an incident on lap 1, a 5-second penalty. Well, he's got another one now, and that is for another incident on the opening lap, so it's a further 5-second time penalty to car 44 for causing a collision, dive bomb and contact giving advantage. Right, on board now then with Fadi Rashmat as he tries to get himself onto the back of Dylan Tan once more and make this bid to see whether 5th place is going to come his way. The lead gap, even though Maulana has put himself second, it's shot up to just under 4 seconds. So Philippa Bokida, who we've seen as a race winner outright in the Asian Series in the past, is doing an outstanding job up front. And here, Ben, you can see, just as in the real world, how the balance of performance works. The Mercedes and the Bentley evenly matched in as much as, although Rashmat can close under braking, he brakes so late it washes out, the gap opens up again. It's really hard to bring down the margin against that Mercedes AMG just up the road.
Yeah, balance of performance, obviously an unspoken thing across all of the GT3 championships, whether it be in the real or the virtual. What you can't do is take the balance of performance from the real world and apply it to the virtual series. It doesn't quite work like that. So there is a bespoke BOP, not just for this championship, but for across the different SRO Esports championships. And there's a bespoke one for the Pro Series that we commentate on at the circuit, because of course that is real world drivers who don't necessarily have the same experience as these guys that we're seeing, getting into sims that they're not familiar with, and so that requires a different BOP as well. So a huge amount of work going on behind the scenes to make sure this racing is as fair as we see it in the real world.
And it's working, isn't it? Because look at the different brands: Porsche, Mercedes AMG, Ferrari, Porsche, Mercedes AMG, Bentley, BMW, Ferrari, Audi rounds out the top 10. You've got an Aston and a McLaren just outside the top 10. So there's a lot going on right now as the cars wriggle their way through this 15th lap. Now, Ferris Stanley, I would offer you, is getting closer to Moussa Mahzoum for third place. Kin Long Lee is fighting back against Terry Rayton to try to break into the top 10. But this is that fight for third, look. So Andika Maulana has just about gapped them. But now Ferris Stanley looking very toey here to try and find a way up and past that Ferrari.
Yeah, and he needs to, because as you say, Maulana's starting to stretch the advantage. So that fight for the Pro Series victory is very much for Maulana right now. And Stanley going a little bit deep, but gets the car stopped. I thought he might try a dive down the inside of the Ferrari there, but it didn't quite have the pace at the end of the straight. And that's quite interesting. He was very, very strong through the wiggly stuff in the end of that first sector, but when it came to the end of the straight, he was nowhere near. And again, looked stronger on the brakes, looked stronger through the turns, but when he has to straighten up and put the power down, the Ferrari seems to just slip away slightly. Let's see if that's the case going into turn one here.
You can see how hard at work Ferris Stanley is. Quick wipe of the face there because he's getting all hot and bothered, but he comes over the line. Of course, it is a long pit straight, so you do have a chance just to relax ever so slightly. You can only nail your foot to the floor there and keep the car in a straight line. There's not much else to do. He's not close enough to make a move. Look how they go off the edge of the racetrack there over the curb onto the green in order to use as much room as they can to then dive across the road, get the right line for the corner.
Interesting one on Alif, who is one of the kind of the mainstays of our championship. We've talked about the fact that he had a 10-second penalty. He has gone into the pits and stopped, and somehow has not managed to fill that 1 litre of mandatory fuel, and therefore you can see on the timing screens it still says that he hasn't pitted. So he's done the whole driving through the pit lane at the speed limit. He didn't wipe away his penalty, so he still has a 10-second penalty, and he did also not take on that 1 litre of fuel. So he's still going to have to do another pit stop where he can do both, and that has ruined his day.
Absolutely right, and it's strange, isn't it, that drivers can still make these mistakes. I know on occasions it's the technology that distorts the image of what we're getting, and they have done them, but still in the heat of battle, drivers do make these little mistakes, and he's one of the more experienced drivers. Now look at this, game on again for third place. Ferris Stanley now breathing down the neck of Moussa Mahzoum's Ferrari, and he's quicker at this section of the circuit as well. Look as they turn through that long, fast right over the brow, drop down towards turn 13 here. Again, close up under braking, the chicane beckons. So yeah, the Porsche has got Grant in a straight line, the Ferrari good through the corners, two classic GT brands, and the gap stretches once more. Mahzoum just pulls away by another couple of lengths, coming now out of turn 16 onto the pit straight.
Just going back to Alif a second, I wonder what has happened there as he's tried to clear taking the penalty in the pits, and basically he wants that 10 seconds added to the end of the race to his total time, because therefore he won't have the issue of traffic and getting past people. So he's decided that he wants to keep that 10-second penalties to be added to the end of the race, which you can do. You can choose not to take it during the pit stop, but by doing so has also deactivated taking the fuel. Because that's all that is a mouse click or an arrow click to say yes or no, and he may well have just he's obviously he's still got the penalty, he's still got that 10 seconds, so he's deactivated that one, but he might have deactivated the fuel as well. So a little bit of a mistake there, and unfortunately that is going to really punish him, even though he was already on the back foot with that 10-second penalty.
And we saw Andrew Lawrenson on the start of the second lap getting involved in a tangle with Sky Lie's Lamborghini, and for that Andrew Lawrenson has been given a 15-second time penalty for causing a collision. So the stewards are still going through all the dramas of the first few laps. On track it has calmed down a little as we're looking at Ryan Houlihan. Now remember that he was 13th when he pitted, he's now 23rd, but of course he's out of sequence. Qualified 14th, so he had gained 1 spot in real terms before the pit window opened, and right now he's being held up a little bit, but he's being held up by a car that has also pitted. So Quishen Huang in the Mercedes-AMG run by LK Full Pace Racing, that's another stopper, and so this is the battle to be the best of the stoppers, and the Mercedes-AMG just keeps the BMW at bay for now. So Ryan Houlihan rides the curb on the outside of the road, presses on, and behind them you've got the car number 25, which is out of the silver class. That's Zachary Smith's Alpha Venturi Racing Aston Martin, the AMR V8 Vantage, and he's going to close if these two continue to hold one another up, because Smith also has made his pit stop. Now that is Fadi Rashmat. Got to go a long way down to those two we were looking at to find anybody that's made a pit stop. Rashmat is still 6th. He's still on the tail of Dylan Tan, but he just can't find a way to really threaten for position right now. He's going to, I think, try and do this on the pit stops.
Yeah, so the first of our pitters is still Quishen Huang, down in 22nd, that we just watched. He's the first car to have pitted and cleared, and as you say, and just ahead of Houlihan for the moment. All of the cars from 21st onwards still yet to pit. We've just got 15 minutes still to go, but I suppose the more you wait, the clearer the track will be for our leading contenders. If you pitted at the start of the window, then and it took yourself 30-40 seconds, then you find yourself right in the slower cars. But as those slower cars make their pit stops and transfer themselves a bit further down the track, it's opening up the opportunity for the likes of Bokida and Maulana to pit without having too many issues. There's just a little bit of an issue going on with a connection, and cars, that's just us seeing that rather than what's happening to the actual cars. What it does do, though, is sometimes distract your drivers, and Ryan Houlihan's been off. He's got a really poor connection.
Yeah, so off he has been, and that's going to drop him way down the order. Philippa Bokida still leading the way, as now, look, Fadi Rashmat comes up to have a go at Dylan Tan. He was very nearly alongside as they ran down towards turn 1, and that really was the biggest challenge that he's offered yet. The cars flick through the right of 1, left at 2, right again at 3, which loops you all the way around. It did not work, as you see, as we go into this second half of the race, but there, certainly, Fadi Rashmat given his best opportunity yet, couldn't quite take it, but he's shown intent, hasn't he, to Dylan Tan?
A couple of the cars with connection issues now, which is a bit of a worry for the likes of Damon Woods. What you're doing there is you're holding on and hoping that the connection settles itself back down again. Just a momentary lapse there from something which upset a couple, but not all of the connections, and you can see that by that little arrow, that little colour bar beside the name of the driver. Smith down in 22nd, still orange, but was red, so it looks as though the connections for various drivers is settling down. But when your connection does that, you don't see the cars ahead of you, like Ryan Houlihan. When you're really close behind another car, you then might find yourself effectively driving into a car that you can't see, and that may be why Ryan Houlihan found himself facing the wrong direction. We've got a couple of cars pitting now, Seeger being one, but he's, I think, spedded the pit lane, so he's got a 30-second penalty. He was up there in the top 10.
Absolutely right, and 21 Luis Moreno has also been given a drive-through, so still penalties come from the stewards and from within the game. Now the leaders turn up once more through the chicane, and Ferris Stanley in 6th place. He dropped back, didn't he, a lap ago, because as we had a bit of a shuffle of the order, up to 4th went Tan, 5th Rashmat, and Ferris Stanley fell back into 6th place. But Philippa Bokida with this enormous advantage now of 6 seconds, making life look easy up front.
What she has to be a little bit concerned about is that her connection bar as well, which seems to be growing and growing. Nothing that the drivers can do, absolutely be completely out of their control, but it's one of those random things. So many things in sim racing are controlled and so simple, and sim racers hate the fact that anything random can happen to them. Of course, that's something you have to learn in the real world, that you might be the fastest driver, but you might be out of luck, and luck comes in a £1.50 washer breaking, which blows the engine, or an engine blowing, which blows the engine. And so many random things can happen, but that doesn't happen in sim racing. But one of the few things that can happen your hardware can fail, your steering wheel, your pedals, and also your connection can fail too. It's now settling down for Paquita. She'll be happy to see that. But I think for a moment there, perhaps those over in Australia were seriously struggling.
It's another one to add to the racing driver's book of excuses, isn't it? Internet connection failed. Fadi Rashmat then on the back of Dylan Tan. This is for fourth. Remember, they have yet to stop. Now, only 10 more minutes of the pit window remains, so they can't get too comfortable about all of this. They've got to serve the stop within the regulations, otherwise a penalty comes. Fadi Rashmat turns down towards the chicane here, 14 and 15. Don't use the curb too much there, because all it's going to do is bounce the car and you lose momentum. And indeed, he loses a length or so coming onto the pit straight. But we've seen the Bentley be really good here in the past. But of course, they are two grunt-and-go front-engine cars. The Mercedes AMG versus the Bentley. Down to turn one they go. The margin between them was, what, just under 0.4 of a second. Fadi Rashmat brakes as late as he dares, claws himself back onto the tail of the Mercedes. But Ben, by then it's too late, because he's got to turn into the corner.
Yeah, Dylan Tan holding on to that fourth position. As I say, the second of our Works Mercedes-Benz entries with Maulana. The two of them would have been working very, very hard. It's unlike many of the series that we see that there is the ability to set these cars up. So you're working on setup. And that setup is completely different to what you would use in the Endurance series. You want a car that can basically use itself over the 60 minutes and at the end of the 60 minutes, be done. So in terms of tyres, in terms of brakes, you'll be working on that versus an endurance car that needs to last a full 12 or 24 hours. So Maulana and Tan and the team of Mercedes-Benz AMG, across the whole of the SRO series will be helping each other, exchanging data, and that's where when you've got a team like Mercedes that have got European entries as well as Asian and American entries, you can effectively have somebody practicing 24 hours a day and just passing information over. They'll have a Discord channel, they'll have WhatsApps, things like that, and more information is gathered. When you've got somebody like Paquita who has teammates in Europe, she's on her own over in this part of the world, time zone wise, she's practicing on her own effectively.
Just takes it to a whole new level, doesn't it? And again, it's a real eye-opener when you compare this to real-world racing. You were looking a moment ago at Dafa Nabil in the BMW, hard at work in a battle. Now, Fadi Rashmat is the first out of our leading 10 to pit, and having failed to get past Dylan Tan on the track, he's rolling the dice here in a sense and seeing if he can do it on the pit stops.
Well, none of them have got that much time. 8 minutes to go. So Rashmat on the pit limiter needs to be really careful not to disengage that too early. We've seen that from a couple of our cars, and it's a heavy penalty for speeding in the pit lane. The game decides it, and it's a stop-go 30-second penalty if you do speed in pit lane. We saw it with Danny Ukudela in the Pro Series a couple of weekends ago, and we've got Sagir here, the first of our pit stoppers, who has also befallen that, and he will have to take it. He takes it now, in fact, and he will drop well out of contention.
We have the most innovative moments of the race backed by Mobileye as well. So we're looking for people that have come up with a really clever way of passing, and it could be that your innovation to move up the order is through timing your pit stops absolutely right. Now, lest we forget, Philippa Paquita is still in the race, miles up the road it seems, and this really is the first time we've seen her for a long, long time. She's up in the traffic, but currently turning through turn 12, up at the top of the lap. Laps the back marker round the outside, beautifully done. Philippa Paquita then drops down the hill now in number 326, the R8G Esports Porsche, and Philippa Paquita back onto the loud pedal then up towards the timing line, stays out for another lap. All this about building the advantage, as now she comes over the timing line, another lap in the book, 22 done. And within second place, Andika Maulana, it is Porsche versus the Mercedes AMG that is very nearly now 7 seconds adrift. Perfect drive thus far by Paquita.
Absolutely, pole position, clear track ahead for the first couple of laps. Nobody hassling her, and she has been absolutely peerless at the front of the field. They've got that Porsche working well, and I have to say this kind of performance is going to surely attract Porsche Works team to promote her into the pro class and give her a bit of support, to be honest, because at the moment the second Porsche is Ferristani. That's a Works Pro entry in 5th. but the second car down in 21st position, all right, has made a stop, and we should see Damon Woods right back at the sharp end of the field once all the pit stops shake out. But she is really doing a very, very good job. And on our first page of her timing screens, it's just those three.
A little bit wide up the curb a moment ago, but that's a tiny slip, and she has done mighty impressive things thus far. As you look at Zachary Smith down in now 16th place, going over the line. Now he's pitted, so slightly out of sequence, comes through, and the Alfa Venturi Racing Aston Martin turns its way now through turn 3, back onto the power. Speed builds all the way along this next section. So all the while now, the order is set to be shuffled by people serving these mandatory stops. Only 5 more minutes of the window still open.
This is the kind of area we would have expected to see the Mobileye BMW of Ryan Houlihan, but because of that spin at this point of the circuit, when we started to see those connection issues, Ryan is way, way down the field in 39th position. May well have even retired from there. He's right at the very, very tail. Just completing 21 laps. And again, look, a lot of the drivers. Zachary was one of the drivers who was struggling before. And again, look at those red bars.
Yeah,
this is
a lot.
You've got no control. You can't do anything. It's not like, like yourself this morning, closing down a couple of windows to try and get the internet to be better. You can't do it when you're driving and you're occupied so much. So you've just got to hope that the server and their connections settle down a bit.
Yeah, suddenly all those red marks disappear back to yellows, but there's quite a lot of orange there as well. Anyway, fingers crossed for another 19 minutes as lower down the order, 118 there of Quishi Huang, the LK Full Pace Racing Mercedes AMG tries to gain a place, because right up ahead is the Damon Woods Porsche. So this is for a battle within the pro class, but it's also for 19th place overall. And remember, within each of the two classes, it's points down to 15th.
Yeah, so effectively 30 of our 48 drivers get themselves points, which is a really good, fair spread, isn't it? And it does mean that if you do have issues and you do find yourself at the tail of the field, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to retire. Shui Huang, I don't know if he can really see what's going on with Woods ahead of them. Side by side into turn 1, has the inside line for turn 2. Is that going to work? There's a bit of contact between them, but really, really hard when the cars are darting around. The way that we're seeing them is the way that they would see them as well. You've got no idea actually where the game sees the car, and so you might feel as though you've given the driver loads of space, but in fact you've driven straight through them and caused them an accident, which you only suddenly realise once the car disappears off into the distance. So this is a really tricky moment for all these drivers, as Maulana is now in the pits and Bokida's connection is almost terminal.
Absolutely, all of a sudden that's looking really bad for her, and Dafa Nabil is struggling as well because the BMW's become a little bit jerky. Look at also number 462 of Kin Long Lai. Kin Long Li also is going red. Look how much red there is all of a sudden. Now, a 5-second penalty has just come up for number 32. Let's talk about Presley Martineau for a moment, as into the pits comes Ryan Chen. 5-second penalty for number 32, Presley Martineau.
I thought we saw Ryan Chan in the pits already, didn't we? I thought did he not do a pit stop right at the start?
You might be right. I didn't log it, but you might well be right about that. I'm getting worried about Philippa Bokida, though, because that's been red, her internet connection, for quite some time now. So things have calmed down for Dafa Nabil. 4th place now. It's Bokida from Tan, from Stanley, from Nabil, from Maulana, who has pitted and therefore becomes the best of those that have stopped. But Andika Maulana has now copped a stop-go 30-second penalty. Look at the tower. There he is, dropping down the order. So Maulana has copped a penalty.
And that is an automatic one. So that's a drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. Whether he's pressed his button thinking he's out of the pits, but he's not necessarily being seen by the game as out in the pits because of these server connection issues that now sort themselves out. Bokida comes into pit lane and she's survived all of those rather scary issues. Only a minute and 20 left of the pit window, but at least for the moment she knows exactly where she is on track, and the game sees the same thing. Into the pits for Bokida, RHG Esports leading from the front from the very beginning, and she should come out in the lead of the race. Let's hope she doesn't get too much traffic.
Indeed, so it's been an absolutely perfect performance thus far So Philippa Bokida is in. There, further down the order, is number 166, the Aston Martin of Oscar Liu, the Macau e-motorsports car. Philippa Bokida has taken on the litre of fuel, and although the internet connection starts to go rather yellow on her, she's back into the race. 15 and a half minutes it's got to survive for, and heads down towards turn 1 as there Dylan Tan is on his way. So he's going to remain in second spot, and it should be Ferris Stanley to take the battle to him for third. So there is Ferris Stanley going down the pit road and just being able to stay ahead of the BMW there of Dafa Nabil, the JMX Phantom car. So Ferris Stanley stays ahead. Now what can he do in these final few laps of the race to do anything about a further place gain? It's not going to be easy for him.
No, absolutely not. I'm not quite sure how the race directors will see that running side by side on pit exit. Of course, very, very dangerous in the real world, but not dangerous in the virtual world. But ultimately, forcing the BMW onto the grass, a little bit naughty.
And now the order is starting to take shape. Back up into second place goes Moussa Makhzoum, who was second on the grid. Then third, having pitted, if you like, earlier and therefore out of sequence. Fadi Rashmat has got ahead of Dylan Tan. So on the pit stops, the Bentley has finally jumped ahead of that Mercedes AMG up into the top 3.
We are seeing a couple of cars that I think are out of the race, including Woods in the 56 Porsche. It seems to be now a lap down. Shaquille also, the McLaren that we saw a little bit earlier on, seems to be a lap down too. There's a car. Is that Ryan Houlihan getting out of the way properly, making sure that he's not in the way of any of the cars coming past? And now we've completed all our pit stops, so that's just good news. We can now just get on with the remaining 14 minutes of the race. Bokida Mansoum, so who's dropped behind then? Oh, that of course is Maulana down in 12th position.
Yeah.
But also with a stop-go penalty, so his pit stop is incredibly slow as well.
Indeed so. Yeah, that's right. So Maulana, sort of double whammy, and it now means that, as I was saying, Masoum is back up in a second place. Bokida's back into strife with the internet connection there because it's gone red, and a lot of red all of a sudden. This is third place Dylan Tam, who has now got back ahead of Fadi Rashmat. So the Mercedes and the Bentley put themselves back in the order. Mercedes AMG ahead of the Bentley. And then Ferris Stanley here, number 73, running in fifth. Now he's got himself caught up in traffic. Behind him is the BMW of Dafa Nabil. In fact, he's not in traffic. He has lost a place. That's what's happened. Zachary Smith, number 25, the Aston Martin, has jumped ahead of the Porsche. So there they are. And it's Zachary Smith now fifth. Down to sixth has gone Stanley. Down to seventh, Dafa Nabil.
That second stint for Zachary Smith has really worked out for him, hasn't it? He was one of our earlier pit stops and up into fifth. He certainly, from memory, wasn't even in the top 10 in the early part of our race, but Pratma in 11th has dropped quite far down. Maulana, as we've already mentioned, now in 10th position, but Zachary Smith up to fifth with good pace, and that is third of our silver cars. But amazing, isn't it, that we've got silver 1, silver 2, best of our pros is now Tan in third position overall.
And Maulana in his recovery doing the fastest lap as he tries to hunt down the opposition, Jake Baldwin being his next target, but when he serves the stop go he's going to lose even more time. So 12 more minutes to go. Philippa Bokida still flirting with the internet dramas, but leads the way comfortably now, it seems, from Moussa Masoum, and then Dylan Tan in third place. So three different brands within the top three, and the race is being stopped because I think it's all to do with the internet issues. So a red flag has been called for, and we have, as I say, 12 minutes or so still to go, but the race being stopped, and we'll await more news as to the resumption of the race.
Yeah, a lot of the drivers suffering quite a lot because when you have cars that are invisible to other cars, you can effectively eliminate them by crashing into them without knowing or seeing. And so it's really, really tricky. And it does seem as though the server is going through an issue and then clearing itself and going through an issue. But a lot of cars have been compromised by that, including, of course, Damon Woods, who I just mentioned, who is out of the race. So race control, red flagging the race. We couldn't do it, I guess, before the pit stop window had shut because we'd had some cars, therefore, that would be not in the same positions. There's no way of restarting this race and putting them into a position where, even in the real world, where the gaps are maintained. You couldn't do that. And so if we red flagged before the pit stop window was shut and some cars had still got to make a pit stop, their race would be completely destroyed, wouldn't it? Because if you imagine Bokida starting in the pole for a resumption of the race but still needing to pit, she would fall all the way down to 40th position when she makes her stop. So now race control talking to on Discord to our drivers. You can see in the centre there one of our laundry house guys looking at a new server, perhaps trying to log into a new server, and that's Terry Rayton. But no news as yet as to what we will do, whether we will resume or whether we will call this a race and score less points. Very, very difficult situation for race control to understand exactly what to do, because of course quite a few of the drivers were being influenced by this server issue quite a few laps before we actually saw the red flag.
Yes, I mean, in a sense, you could sort of pick up with the remaining 12 minutes, do a formation lap, and then you'd have sort of 10 minutes of racing, wouldn't you, up towards the end of the race? But
yeah, absolutely. We could do a little sprint race now that at least the pit stops are clear. But unfortunately, for the likes of Damon Woods, for Shaquille, even Andrew Lawrenson earlier on, who has retired out the race, suggesting that the contact that he had with his Lamborghini was because he didn't know where that Lamborghini was on the main straight, and that's believable actually from a man like Andrew Lawrenson, who has so much experience. Is it Andrew who is a lawyer? It's the kind of guy you don't want to kind of fight with.
Yeah. Yes, I think that's right. Yes. Thinking back a couple of years ago when we first encountered him, if you like, in this championship. I think I'm right in saying that we've done 75% though, so points could be awarded at that juncture. Anyway, we'll wait and see what race control offers. I mean, the one constant throughout all of this, Ben, has been the lead of Philippa Bokida, and just an outstanding drive, barely a wheel wrong, and the gap steadily increasing lap after lap after lap after lap. Yeah,
absolutely peerless, fantastic performance from her, and as I say, really shining a light on the RHG Esports squad on a sim that perhaps they haven't been the strongest on, but to take the first round would be fantastic. What will be a shame, I suppose, over 75% will be full points, so she will get the full points from her victory as well. At the moment on the timing screen, it suggests that Mironenko, Sergei Mironenko for a laundry house, is the leader of our race. Not quite sure how he's ended up at the top of the timing screens, whether he hadn't made his pit stop at that point, but anyway, if you remove him, and how you do that I'm not quite sure, then Bokida would be our victor ahead of Mansoom and Tan. It would be very, very disappointing for Maulana, who was actually, I think, on course perhaps at the end of the race to chase down Bokida in the Mercedes, and the Mercedes team will be very strong in making sure that the rules are implemented correctly and that their driver isn't punished. When you're a privateer, it's a bit more tricky, but when you are fighting the likes of Mercedes and you're representing these big brands, everything really does have to be done by the book.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that lead that's being displayed for number 7 is a rogue, because it's also given a 2-lap advantage to number 7. So Sergei,
actually, maybe he's still going.
Well, yes, maybe he's the one that's still circulating. But I think that's a rogue somewhere, so that's going to have to be addressed as well by the race officials. So they've clearly been talking on Discord to the drivers. We'll try and get to the bottom of exactly what the plot is for either a result or the resumption of the race. But a real shame that we've had to have this situation, isn't it?
Yeah, confirmation that Mironenko hasn't stopped yet. He's still driving.
Right,
he hasn't actually bailed out of the server, hence how he's 2 laps ahead. It's such a shame, but then when you think about the technology required, and it still amazes me, and we've been doing this for a good couple of years now. We've got drivers from across Asia talking to a server, talking to a production team that's primarily based in Europe, and everyone is connected to everyone. We are able to see exactly what the drivers are seeing within milliseconds of each other, be able to comment on that, be able to then broadcast that to the world across our various channels. And there's a minute delay. And somehow all of these drivers usually are able to see exactly what each other are doing, despite being thousands and thousands and thousands of kilometres away. I mean, Australia itself is the size of Europe. So, you know, when we do the Americas series, everything's in America. When we do the European series, everything is basically in Europe. But when we do the Asia series, we're talking about a huge continent of drivers and race control effectively in Europe. It's a massively difficult thing to not have issues with, and we see it not just on ACC but across sim racing as a whole. Sometimes platforms struggle, sometimes the servers, the Amazon servers that we use, the Amazon cloud servers, struggle because of all kinds of random things, including world events that are going on right now. Look at airlines at the moment, they can't seem to get their computers up and running, and if you have yourself a British Airways flight, then you're quite likely to not be able to get it because they can't operate a computer at the moment. So it's actually surprising we don't have more server issues in sim racing, considering how many sim races go on every day. We've got 48 drivers from across Asia, and we are trying to get everyone to see the same thing at the same time.
Now, the drivers are going to be briefed, I think, about the restart process. So I think we are going to go back racing. So I understand that as we have done 70% of the distance, there will not be a restart. There is enough of the race that has taken place in order for a result to be declared. So we go back a lap, and Filippo Bocchida will be confirmed as the race winner. So the race is not going to be continued. That, I think, is what the drivers are being told in the briefing. So the decision has been made to take out those that didn't make the pit stop, or apply a penalty to them if they hadn't pitted when the red flag came out. And so Filippo Bocchida will be confirmed as the race winner. And that's absolutely right for her, because, Ben, as we've said, it was just a perfect performance.
Absolutely. From qualifying all the way through to the very last lap of this race, she was on top of her car. She was never challenged. She did exactly what she needed to do. She controlled the race, didn't she? And in a performance that we've not necessarily seen from her over the last couple of years, she's been very, very strong at points in moments, but this was peerless. No issues, no mistakes, and absolutely deserving of those full points in her class. But she will share full points with Dylan Tan in the Mercedes Legions of Racers car, who finishes fourth but wins the pro category.
And of course, she also gets the points for pole position. And once we've unravelled everything, we can double check on the fastest lap in the classes as well, because there are points available for that as well. Now, whether Philippa is going to come to the comms box to be interviewed, we'll wait and find out, because at the moment I think the driver's briefing is still in place. But it's a shame that we can't go racing once more, but it's certainly given us a lively race. And as ever in SRO Esports racing, in this opening round of the Mobileye GT World Challenge Esports Asia series, we've had some good battles and a few new names to look out for the rest of the championship.
Yeah, absolutely, and we'll see many of these top-end drivers participating in the first round of the Endurance Championship this weekend. And then next week, I think it's the first turn of the Americas to have their first sprint race on Wednesday. Well, a week off, and then we will reset for the European, Asia and America series for round 2. Let's now have a quick chat to our race winner, Filippa Bocchida. What a dominate. Does it feel like a dominating performance, Filippa?
I kind of spent the whole race super anxious. I mean, I don't really know how to explain it, but I went into the race kind of confident, but I was really scared of the first few laps, and I didn't really shake the anxiety after the first lap. So, I mean, you can call it dominating if you want, but I don't think it was really that good.
God, if you've been carrying the anxiety across the race, you must be absolutely knackered. It must have been even heightened more when we started seeing the server issues and your connection and the cars blinking all over the place. Talk us through that.
Yeah, so I was on chat with a few other people, and then at the time I didn't have any cars in front of me, so I didn't see what was happening. But I heard my friends were saying that there was cars teleporting all over the place, and then I saw one fly across the pit straight in front of me, and I thought, what the hell? So I got really, really worried, because when stuff like this happens, sometimes the cars are just completely ghosted, and then sometimes they just completely destroy the car. And I got really nervous because all it took was one car to hit me, and I would lose the position. But thankfully, nothing happened. But I don't know if I can say the same for everyone else. I know my friend Hooli, he got hit. Which is a shame, but what can you do? These things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk us through the support that you've gained from being part of R8G this year. How much work goes into preparing for a race like this, not just with your Asian counterparts, but also across the world with the guys in Europe and in America?
It's a bit hard, that one. Being in Australia and the rest of them in Europe, sometimes it's a little bit too difficult to get on at the same time with them in practice. It's either too early or too late for me, and then so it's like, I think if I want to practice with them, I have to get up at 4 a.m. So it's a bit too much for me sometimes. But just when I do see what they're doing, I read through, I watch what they're doing, and they post up their laps and replays and stuff, so I can have a look through those and see if they've found anything special with the setup. But yeah, they've been great to me, just, giving me anything I need. If I need help, they're always willing to tell me what they're doing, and I can just comb through what they've done and figure out what I need.
Well, Philippa, you are the lead of the championship. You've got decent points for qualifying, full points for the race as well. Congratulations, and hopefully the anxiety can be shaken off for round 2.
Yeah, well, yeah. It's also a bit weird. Don't know if I should really be in silver, considering the classes, but oh well. That's what happens when you didn't reach the points threshold last year, so unfortunate, but we'll change that this year.
Congratulations, Philippa, and see you on the next one.
Thank you.
There you go, Philippa Kapakida, our champion of the first round here in Barcelona, and they will be heading over in a couple of months' time, I should say. It's a month break before we go racing Imola next time up for these Asian drivers, and I think they'll be looking forward to a few more Asian tracks being included on the SRO, on the ACC platform, I should say, in the near future, because we will eventually get to Asia in Bathurst and Suzuka at the second half of the year. Well, that's been highly entertaining, David. A shame to end under a red flag, but as Philippa says, these things happen. They happen in the virtual and they happen in the real world race. I hope you've enjoyed it.
I have, as ever, because we know that it gives good racing, and everywhere we look there was a battle going on, apart from, really, for the lead. Philippa Bokida making the point that she's very experienced and therefore perhaps ought to be a pro rather than a silver, but with the points scored last year not quite reaching that threshold, so that's where she has been categorised. But that might change as the season goes on. But I mean, absolutely, that's the driver to beat in the class. Once we have a confirmed result, and you'll find it within the SRO Esports website, within the Asia section there, you can have a look at how the classes are and indeed the standings, and then we can start to look forward to the next round on the 11th of May when we head to Imola.
Yeah, 11th of May for the next round of the Asia Sprint Series, and this weekend you will find us the 12 Hours of Bathurst, the first round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge Esports, powered by Mobileye Partnerships. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you then.